Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's that time of year for Advent of Code. This is a yearly series of programming puzzles that Eric Wastel has been releasing every December since 2015. And this is, as they say here, the first year there will be only 12. The 12 days of Christmas, not the 24 days of Christmas, which I'm sure some people are disappointed by, but I'm kind of relieved. I enjoy Advent of Code, but I think the last time I did all 25 days was like 2017 or 2016. I know I did them all in 2015, and once or twice in the years shortly after that, but since then it always gets to a point where I'm like, this is more grind than fun, I'm out of here. And every year, starting I think in 2016, I did them on YouTube. Eventually, right? You know, there was at least one fairly depressed year where I did not want to do any programming until like April. And so I did some of them in Kotlin that year, actually, I think. But anyway, I enjoy these puzzles. They're fun. You can solve them however you want, with whatever goals you have in mind. I'm also pleased to see that this year he took away the global leaderboard, which I think was providing incentive. I mean, I don't know. You know, people loved competitive programming. If you're into that, you know, great. Enjoy. But the issue I saw with the global leaderboard was that people felt bad about not making the global leaderboard. And like back when Advent of Code was very, very new, there were actually a couple days when I made the top 100 but like, that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to have a good time. Solve problems in a way that I think is interesting, which often means, to me, means like a clean definition of the domain and readable code that, you know, makes use of that domain understanding to, you know, to solve the problem. So I'm not at all interested in solving as quickly as possible. You can see, you know, I'm not even starting today until 10 hours after the puzzles went up. So that's all just a preamble to, like, you know, if you've never seen this, that's the kind of approach I have. Most years, including this one, I solved the problems in Haskell, a purely functional programming language that I find enjoyable. I'm, you know, not a complete beginner at it. I'm not a professional level Haskell programmer. I'm a professional level programmer in some other stuff, and, you know, I could get by in Haskell probably, but I don't really do anything other than, like, I don't really do multi-file Haskell projects, right? But for Advent of Code, you don't need that much. So anyway, and I'm doing this one on December 1st. The next several I will have to do much later because I'm going out of town tomorrow. So it'll be at least a week until day 2 shows up. Well, I guess it's possible I'm not actually leaving until, like, you know, Tuesday morning. So if I have time Monday night, maybe I'll do the 2nd. But definitely the 3rd won't come out for a while. But I did want to. I thought, hey, you know, I'm not leaving till tomorrow. It's nice to get out day 1 where I can announce, because I know some people, this is their favorite thing of the year about my channel, is that I do Advent of Code. Some people only subscribe for this, I'm sure. So I thought it would be nice to get the announcement out that, yes, I'm planning to do it. No, I'm not putting it off till April, but I am putting it off for at least a week. But hey, here's one day. So, okay. Lots of preamble. We haven't even looked at Advent of Code yet, but, you know, it's going to be a long video. Since I don't try to do these quickly, you know, almost all of these take me at least half an hour. Sometimes in the later stages they get up to 2. I think it took 3 hours once, and then I just stopped. But for day 1, it's usually not that hard. So, I haven't read these. I'm doing these blind. Generally, that's true. If it isn't true, I'll let you know. But today I haven't read it. Day 1, secret entrance. The elves. That's right. These are all, like, themed as you are helping Santa somehow. And I guess I should say also about Advent of Code, you can solve these however you want. In particular, Eric doesn't run your code, right? At every one of these puzzles, you have to write a program to meet the specification. But how you do that, that's up to you. You do that on your machine. The answer is going to be a short string or number. and he just checks that you got the right number. So you don't have to do this if you want to try this in some wacky language. I mean, there are people who do this in spreadsheets or whatever. Anyway, the elves have good news and bad news. The good news is that they've discovered project management. This has given them the tools they need to prevent their usual Christmas emergency. For example, they now know that the North Pole decorations need to be finished soon so that other critical tasks can start on time. The bad news is that they've realized they have a different emergency. According to their resource planning, none of them have any time left to decorate the North Pole. So they will finish making the decorations on time but not putting them up. Okay. To save Christmas, the elves need you to finish decorating the North Pole by December 12th. Collect stars by solving puzzles. 2 puzzles will be made available on each day. The second puzzle is unlocked when you complete the first. Each puzzle grants 1 star. Good luck. You arrive at the secret entrance to the North Pole base, ready to start decorating. Unfortunately, the password seems to have been changed, so you can't get in. A document taped to the wall helpfully explains. Due to new security protocols, the password is locked in the safe below. Please see attached document for the new combination. The safe has a dial with only an arrow on it. Around the dial are the numbers 0 through 99 in order. As you turn the dial, it makes a small click noise as it reaches each number. The attached document, your puzzle input, contains a sequence of rotations, 1 per line, which tell you how to open the safe. A rotation starts with an L or R, which indicates whether the rotation should be to the left, toward lower numbers, okay, counterclockwise, or to the right, towards higher numbers, clockwise. Then the rotation has a distance value, which indicates how many clicks the dial should be rotated in that direction. So, if the dial were pointing at 11, rotation of R8 would go right 8, I assume that's 19, yes, points at 19. Then L19 would point at 0. Because the circle, turning it left from 0 makes it point at 99. Turning it right from 99 makes it point at 0, yes. So, modular arithmetic should be coming to mind right now. I would not be shocked if, so like, part 1 and part 2, part 2 usually reveals some twist, something that's a little bit, maybe it's an additional objective in the same, with the same foundations. But often it changes the foundations slightly. I wouldn't be surprised if part 2 is like, oh, actually, there aren't just 100 numbers, there's 110. And like all the people who did stuff, counting on it being the last 2 digits or something would be out of luck and they'd have to go back and do modular arithmetic properly. But we'll see. So the die we're pointing at 5, rotation of L10 would cause it to point at 95, yes. The dial starts pointing at 50. You could follow the instructions, but your recent required official North Pole secret entrance security training seminar taught you that the safe is actually a decoy. The actual password is the number of times the dial is left pointing at 0 after any rotation in the sequence. I see. Okay, well, this seems pretty straightforward. And everybody gets, well, I don't think it's true that everyone gets a different puzzle input, but there's a large number of different puzzle inputs which are distributed more or less at random to the populace. So my answer will not be the same as yours. If you are publishing your Advent of Code solutions, which Eric says is a totally fine thing to do, he asks that you not publish any Advent of Code IP in a way, don't publish the puzzles, don't publish your inputs. So, of course, you can read them look at in the video or whatever, but I won't ever be showing the entire input. I might look at some of it, and it won't be in my Git repository, which, by the way, I share these on GitHub. You can find them github.com/amalloy/ I think it's AOC-2025. I'm not sure. I haven't put it up yet this year, but that's the pattern I think I usually use. So, and I also do these all in a terminal window. There was one year where I was trying to learn how to use tmux rather than have a bunch of different windows open, and I like it. I'm not the most proficient tmux user, but I can get by. And so I do this in Emacs with Stack and GHC and GHCI in tmux. This is my little tiny automated input fetcher here. I have to update this every year, but I just, Eric asks that you not use automation to download your input multiple times. Don't download it wastefully. And so you can, people have binaries they publish that like cache this thing for you or whatever, but and that's great, But the way that I prefer to do it is I just have a tiny little shell script, and I've copied from Chrome. This is the request that Chrome sends when I click Get Your Puzzle Input. And I've just turned it into a shell script, except that my cookie is hidden in a different file, so you can't read it. And as you can see, it's like I just have a variable here, day, and it's used again here, day. Nothing too exciting. So I've run it already, so I won't run it again. But if we look at my input for day 1, it's a bunch of L's and R's and numbers. Great. Actually, I assume we don't have any of these that are more... Oh, we do. I was going to say there probably aren't any that are more than 100, but actually, yeah, 206. So we can be asked to rotate by more than 100, which this should be the same as R6 as far as day 1 is concerned. But day 2 may introduce new tweaks that, it's actually the number of times you passed over 0, not the number of times you stopped on 0 or something, right? And then 206 would be different from 6. Interesting. Okay. So there you go. That's a bunch of input. Do I even have... Let's see, how do I usually do this? I usually have Emacs in my first window. So... Oh, I guess I can show briefly that I do... I have a tiny little stack project skeleton here that I just initialize a stack project for every day of the puzzles. I know stack isn't the cool way to do simple projects anymore. I learned to use stack back when Cabal was a real nightmare, because it didn't have sandboxes, and I came from like a closure perspective where every project should be isolated, and Cabal wasn't at the time. These days, as I understand it, it's very easy to use Cabal, but I've tried briefly to learn a new thing, and just setting anything up is fucking impossible. Excuse my French. So I just use the same old stack setup I've had for years, and it's fine. One stack project per puzzle is sort of a ridiculous way to do it also, but who cares? I don't ever upload these, so... I include a bunch of libraries that I don't usually need for any given day, but I like having them handy. Some of them are just like a workhorse, right? You always want containers. It's probably in base these days, I don't know. But, regex applicative, I just think is a fun way to parse text. It's not the easiest or the most efficient, but I like it. And, every so often you need monad transformers, so I've got these in here. I forget when I ever used quick check. I don't usually write tests for my Advent of Code stuff. It might have been when I wanted to demonstrate arbitrary or something. I don't know. And recursion schemes and lens. Recursion schemes I think is fun, but not usually the easiest way to solve something. And lens was something that one time I was trying to understand, and I'm not that interested in learning to understand it these days. Okay, so anyway, that's my project skeleton that I just defined for every day. And it includes this source file, which is like 8 years old or something. I think using arrows just for this is kind of silly, but I wrote it when I was using Clojure a lot, and Clojure has juxt built in, which is just this, right? Take two functions, apply them to the same argument, and return a tuple of the results. But to get that in Haskell, you need an import. And you could do it easily enough with just tuples, and I don't know, but I imported arrow, and so now it's stuck in my project template forever, and I'm never changing it. So, the general structure I have for these is all of our I/O is in main, and it's just to read the file named input text, and then pass the string that we get to this function, which is a composition of prepare, a function that usually does parsing, And then part 1 and part 2, call them both and print the results. So that's my project skeleton. So today, prepare will be parsing the input, which I will do with text regex applicative. I mean, it's a very simple parsing problem. You could do it much more simply with something else. But I just like text regex applicative. It's a nice way. I don't know. It's not going to look that nice for such a simple problem because it'll be a bunch of extra overhead. But I like it because it is a way to write composable parsers without needing monad or backtracking. So it, in theory, scales better to adversarial inputs than using a monadic library does. And it's better at, being debuggable than a single regular expression in a typical PCRE-derived regex engine would be. But today, just writing it with really simple Haskell text parsing would be much easier, but I'm probably not going to do that. I'm probably going to use text regex applicative just because I like it. But before we do any of that, let's define some types. That's what Haskell is all about. So data direction, well, we can say that's either left or right. And we'll want like at least ecord, show, and enum, I suppose, right? Might not use all of those, but they belong there. And let's say that an instruction, I suppose. What do they call them in the input over here? They're called rotations. Okay, we'll call them a rotation then. A rotation is a direction and an int. And I don't think I'll need anything but show for this, really. I don't even really need show. I don't think I'll need eq or ord for direction either, I guess. So it's sort of inconsistent for me to say, oh, I'll only use show for this one. But for this one, I'll add eq and ord. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't think I'll need enum either. So I guess it's a question of, like, philosophically, what do I think about my approach to programming? Should I define instances for all the type classes that I think make sense, or just the ones that I happen to need at the moment? Am I writing a library or an application? Well, I'm writing an application. So I guess. But, like, I also kind of like to think of this as, something, a best practices definition of all the things I'm defining. And I feel like it would be best practice to give this an eq and an ord instance if I were publishing this somewhere, right? So let's go ahead and do that here as well, even though I don't imagine I'll need it. So if you're not familiar at all with Haskell, I'm not going to go and explain every little thing in this video. My first year doing Advent of Code in Haskell on YouTube, which was 2016 or 2017, I went into a lot more depth on how everything works, every little thing. I'll explain a lot, but I'm not like, what is a type class? I'm not going to go into a 10-minute detail. Detail's the wrong word. Tangent? I don't know. On that. But, this is, eq is the type class for things you can compare for equality. Ord is things you can compare and say one is greater, less than, or equal. Show is things that can be printed. So Haskell will automatically derive, or GHC will automatically derive type classes, a small set of built-in type classes it can derive for user-defined types automatically, provided those types meet certain constraints. And eq and ord and show and enum are among them. So I think these are the main definitions that I need for this problem, right? I don't think there's much else in the domain. we could say that, the safe is in the domain, right? And the fact that it has 100 numbers and one number that it's currently pointed at, yeah, I mean, that's true. But the fact that it has 100 numbers will be hard, it won't change in part 1. And so all that's left is the number it's currently pointing at. And in part 2, it might change, but I'm all right with part 1 and part 2 being slightly different. If it turns out that there's a solve function and all it needs differently is the how many numbers are on the dial or whatever, I'll happily have part 1 and part 2 both just call that function and pass it a different number. I don't need a safe type. So then what we need is, so I have input, the type that I define as part of my project skeleton. I don't want my input, so read file input.text just returns a string, all of the text in that file. It returns an IO of that, but whatever. Point is, I'll then, I pass it, I do some IO with read file, and that's the only IO that I do. Then I pass it into a pure function that parses the single string into an input. And I vary what input is each day, each puzzle, based on what parts 1 and 2 need to know about the input. And so here it seems quite simple. The input is a list of rotations, right? Because that's what's in the input file. So writing the prepare function is a good next step, I think. Let's go ahead and... Well, okay, first I'll show you the really simple way to write this with Haskell. Map rotation lines where rotation of L n is rotation left read n, rotation of R n is a rotation right read n. So I think here, for example, we could just... I think this would be an okay definition, right? Okay, a bunch of warnings or no errors. What's wrong? Oh, left and right. I can't... Those already exist in either. That's true. All right, I'll just call them L and R. I mean, that's a little bit shorter than I would like. In that it's not... It's not like self-documenting, but it sort of is because they're of type direction. I don't know. I think it's fair game. Okay, so this compiled, and then we had an exception. What happened? No exception with backtrace. No, 2 exception with backtrace. What happened? How did I... Oh, rotatoin? Did I spell it wrong? I see. I spelled it wrong once, and so it was incomplete pattern. Really, I ought to, like... Do I not have all warnings on? No, it's just... Okay. So pattern matches are not exhaustive. So this is fair, yes. If the input didn't start with L or R, my program would crash, but that's okay. It does. And so you can see here, I have parsed the input, right? There's all the rotations in a nice little list, and it really was very simple. But wouldn't it be nice to make it much more complicated? Don't you think? And not all that much more complicated. I don't even remember. It's been a while. I haven't used this for about a year because that was when the last add-in to code was. What do we have? I mean, many these days is in... Actually, can I... Okay, it's in... I mean, it is in control applicative many, but it's re-exported by TextReg explicative, so I guess we'll use that. Many, we want... So this is a way to take a parser for a thing and turn it into a parser for many of that thing in a row. What else do I need? There's one for specific... I need to open the docs for TextReg explicative. Yeah. There's all that stuff, but what's the... Common? Yes. Decimal is in base 10, not as in it has a period in it, right? Yeah, okay. So that I do want eventually. What else do I even need? Well, I need the matching function for sure. I don't know, maybe that's it? No, I need sim at least to match L and R. And from common, I need decimal. Okay. And I always end up needing, like... Matt, maybe... No, you have to import that. Data, maybe? Probably? But I don't want Matt, maybe. That would silently drop anything that failed to parse. I want from, maybe, I guess? Oh, and that is actually in scope, huh? No, it's not. Okay, whatever. So I think these are the things I end up using every day when I use reg explicative to parse, which I like to do in general. So this, as I say, now notably this, like, this crashes if the input doesn't parse. It's not robust. So that's one problem with parsing things in this way. You can easily write incomplete partial patterns that fail to match. And with a parser, you can get a better error message. Now, what I'm going to do is write a parser that, if it fails to match, it'll give me back nothing. And then I'll crash when I get a nothing. But it won't be the parser's fault. It'll be mine. Okay, so let's see. So we're not going to do it this way. Although, maybe what I will do is say, this is sort of the straightforward approach. So from maybe error no parse is what I always end up doing. And then it just takes match with, oh, what argument does this thing take its argument? It wants the input first, doesn't it? And the regex second, I think. Yes, it wants the input first. So I usually do this. Say, I'm gonna define input is something, some parser. Does this compile these days? Yes. Okay. So input is going to be a parser that takes a string and produces an input. So I say match something against input. Prepare is a function, which is the composition of matching something against input, which gives you back a maybe. And then if it's a just, if there was no error, it returns the actual input. And if it was a nothing, it blows up. So that's how prepare works. So input is going to be a parser for inputs, for a list of input. No, for a single input, which is a list of rotations. So it's many of rotation followed by a new line, I think. That's pretty simple. Rotation is rotation. Well, we'll write it first. It's pretty simple. It parses a direction and a decimal in that order, and then bundles up those results inside of a rotation object. Decimal's already given to us by text regex explicative. We imported it, remember? So we just have to define a direction. And direction is either, let's see, I don't know the operator precedence for this, so I'm putting in some extra parentheses. It's either L of sim L, or it's R after parsing sim of R. There you go. That's not so bad, right? Does this still compile? No. Or is not in these days? It's not in the prelude? Well, I mean, it's not or, it's like the applicative, the alternative or, but... Oh, yes, and this shouldn't be a new line. It should be the symbol, a new line. Text regex applicative. Okay, well, fine, I'll import. I can't believe that's not in. Surely everybody uses this all the time, right? Oops. Yeah, I'm not in GUCI, I'm in the terminal. Okay, so this compiles. I guess we could say run it. Yeah, and it produces the same rotations. So obviously a lot more concepts here. And the code is longer. And because I just blow up on bad parses anyway, it's not really like more robust, but it is more composable, right? Here I define concepts like how do you parse a rotation? How do you parse a direction? What is an input? It's many rotations, right? Here, this is all sort of implicit, and that has its place. It's nice in some ways, but I like the idea. It just makes me feel warm and fuzzy to have composable regexes. And of course, this looks more like a parser than a regex. But text regex applicative is a regex engine that exposes applicative as the main way to compose regexes, so it looks more like a parser. But under the hood, it does regex-like stuff, but without the backtracking. Okay, so I mean, this would be a reasonable thing to commit as like just part one, or to a parser. But let's go ahead and do part one, shall we? Part one of rotations is let's say length filter equals 0 of fold. What kind of fold do I want here? I guess it has to be a fold R if I want the intermediate results. Oh, I don't want a fold. I want a scan. A scan L? Probably. Scan L rotate 50. I think that makes sense, doesn't it? Where rotate. What order does scan L take its arguments in? A, B, A. So it wants the rotation second and the current position first. Pause rotation der magnitude is let's see. I think GHC actually, or Haskell has a good definition for mod, right? If I say like -2 mod 10, it should be 8. No, it's -2. I thought that was part of the difference between quotient remainder or quotient dividend and mod remainder, was that mod made sense on negative numbers. I was working with Lua the other day, and Lua actually does have -2 mod 10 is 8, which I found nice. Mod negative numbers? What? Ah! Okay, I get it. Funny joke. Very funny, Haskell. You got me, I think. Maybe. So I Googled this, and Google's AI overview, which, again, I mean, these AI things could be totally lying, but it says what I thought. The mod function is defined such that the result always has the same sign as the divisor, the second argument. Whereas I'm seeing not that. But then I see a different post saying, don't forget to put negative numbers in parentheses. So I think it's actually doing this for me. 2 mod 10 and then negate it. Whereas if what I meant was this, -2 mod 10. Yes, that's 8. Okay, very funny. You got me. All right. So what I think I want here is just... well, actually, I shouldn't have to... This is from a... The Clojure people, I don't know, I haven't been much of the Clojure community for like a decade, but they used to anyway love to say complect. That was a word that Rich Hickey found in a dictionary somewhere and decided would be a cool word for everybody to talk about all the time. Making something complicated when you could have made it, composing two things into kind of a twisted whole when you could have done two separate things and then combined them. I'm not Rich. I don't claim that's exactly what he meant by complect, but that's sort of vaguely how I remember it. And so here, what I had started writing is a complexion of the concept of determining what it means to rotate left or right with adding that to a current position. And scanl would work. I could do that. But wouldn't it be nicer if instead I turned each rotation into just a single integer, positive or negative, and then I just scanned adding them together? Wouldn't that be nicer? I think so. So I'll just say scan the addition function, adding 50. Starting at 50, rather. But first I will map each rotation to an offset. And now I don't need to know about the position. That's handled separately. We're just looking at rotation. Case is magnitude times case of L. That's negative R1. I think that makes sense. Does it compile? This is backwards. I usually have GHCI in window 1 and the shell in window 2, don't I? I think so. I'm not totally sure. But since that's how I've been remembering it today, I'm just gonna switch them. Oh, yes. I haven't changed the type of part 1. It should return an int, not an input. Yeah, okay. If I run it, we get a number. 4. That's very suspiciously low. Isn't it? Maybe not. There are 4,000 lines in the input. You would expect if the input were random that you would land on 0 1% of the time. So you would expect about 40, not 4. Now the input isn't random. Eric designed it for some purpose. But 4 is a suspicious number. It's way lower than you should expect. So I guess what I'll do first to debug this is return all the positions it stops at and see if anything looks off about that. Yeah, that's wrong. Did I forget to do mod? I did. I see. That's what's wrong. I forgot to do the mod 100 part. Okay. Well, that's easy enough to fix. Okay, let's leave that there, though. So I'll do all the rotation tracking without actually trimming to be mod 100, and then I'll trim it when I'm checking whether it's 0. This is not exactly a great domain model, but it would at least tell me whether, like, it should produce the right answer. And now this is much better. We see a ton more zeros, way more than 1 in 100. And we don't see any numbers up in the 10,000s. So this looks much better. But now, okay, yeah, very funny. Gotta fix the types again. 1,059. That's like 1 out of 4? Seems like a lot, but not shocking. All right. We can put that into the website and see if it's right, I guess. That's the right answer. Okay, we'll do part 2 in a minute. But let's take a moment here to look at this function and see what's going on here, because I didn't explain it totally while I was doing it. I like this. I mean, I don't know. You can certainly go overboard in writing point-free code where, notice part 1 is a function, but I didn't even mention its argument. That's implicit in that, like, I'm saying part 1 is a composition of these 5 functions. And so, when you compute this composition, it's a function. You say part 1 is that function, and that function takes an argument, but I don't ever have to mention it here. So we just call map to offset on the input. So each rotation is converted into an offset, which I've said is gotten by multiplying the magnitude by either 1 or minus 1. Interestingly, if I had done this backwards, I would still get the right answer, right? Because 50 is right in the middle. Kind of curious. Oops, that's not how you undo. This is. Kind of curious. That's another thing that could change for part 2, is maybe we won't be right in the middle of the dial. I don't know. Anyway, so we convert each thing into just the domain of ints. We forget about the rotation being left or right, and we just say, okay, we'll represent that as a single int. Scanl takes an operation and a list and a starting value, applies that operation successively. So it's like, we're adding the first number in the list, the starting value, and then adding the second number in the list to that sum, and then adding the third number in the list to that sum, and so on. But instead of just producing a single total sum at the end, it gives you back a list of all the intermediate sums. So I get to see what the state of the machine was as it was going. Then I just take each of those numbers, mod 100, and count how many of them are 0. That's what's going on here. So, that said, let's... A1, part 1. And on to part 2. You're sure that's the right password, but the door won't open. You knock, but nobody answers. You build a snowman while you think. As you're rolling the snowballs for your snowman, you find another security document that must have fallen into the snow. Due to newer security protocols, please use password method 0x434c 9434b until further notice. Is this... This is 5 bytes. And it looks like it could plausibly be ASCII, right? This is probably, like, as a joke, this is probably a 5-letter word. I don't know where A is in the alphabet, but I'm guessing it's 4-1. Oh, you guys don't get to see the tooltips. There's, in every one of these puzzles, as far as I know, there's like a joke somewhere that you can mouse over and it gives you the tooltip. And the jokes are revealed to you if you get all 50 stars, or I guess this year 24 stars. But you can find them just by mousing over stuff. And in this one, it looks like it's this. You can't read the tooltip because of the way I'm capturing the window, but I'll read it to you. You should have seen the chaos when the elves overflowed their 32-bit password method counter. Yeah, it is 5 bytes, you're right. So, but this looks like it's probably ASCII. What is 4 in hex? 4 times 16, that's 64. Yeah, I think 65 is A. So this should be C, and then C is what, 12? So the 12th letter is L? Yeah, L. A-L-I-C. But then this isn't E. B is 11. K. Click. CLICK. Yeah, this says click. Oh, click. Okay. You remember from the training seminar that method click means you're actually supposed to count the number of times any click causes the dial to point at 0, regardless of whether it happens during a rotation or at the end of one. That was one of the things I speculated might be in part 2, based on how the fact the input had numbers like 205, which should be the same as 5. Okay. Well, whether it happens during or at the end. Okay. In this example, yeah. Be careful. If it were pointing at 50, a rotation... Oh, yes. Thank you for that reminder. I was not going to be careful. Right. So... I guess we can still do most of the stuff in part 1, right? Convert rotations into sines and take the scanl sum of adding up those rotations, the intermediate steps. But rather than looking at which ones are 0, we have to look at each pair of things and see how many zeros were between them. Now, it's not so clear. Because one thing you could do is just take both numbers mod 100. No. The opposite of mod 100. To do their quotient 100, right? Just look at their hundreds digit and see how much they differ by. Right? Like if you go from 107 to 318, they differ by, well, 1 to 3. There's a difference of 2, and we did indeed cross over 0 twice. Once when we went to 200 and once when we went to 300. The problem is that, like, there's a boundary condition thing when one of the ends is exactly 0. I think that would be right if we never had exactly 0. But, like, going from 5 to 0, obviously they both have the same hundreds digit, it's 0. But we did actually... we did pass... We touched 0 at the end there when we went from 5 to 0. So what is... So there's quotient and dividend are two ways to split up numbers. We looked at mod already, and its kind of counterpart is rem. So what do we get? Rem is like, truncating division in a way that makes sense, like mod, instead of a stupid way like quotient and remainder, which is convenient for a computer that was built in 1955. So I want to see, like, what happens if I say -5 quat, nope, rem, nope, div and mod, 100, -1. Yeah, that's what I want. That's the hundreds digit in a way, right? So, for example, if I went from 5 to -5, and I used this method of looking at their hundreds digit using div, then I would get the right answer. I would see, oh, it went from 0 to -1. Great. But going from 5 to 0, it would not be correct. Because I would say, oh, they both have the same hundreds digit, which is 0. But it should count as touching 0. And what about if I went from like 105 to 100? Is the same problem present there? Yeah, they both have the same hundreds digit. It's 1. But actually, one of them should count as 0. Okay, well, I mean, this is not the hardest thing in the world to do. In a funny way, I mean, most of this can be reused, right? I can do this. Positions is this. Takes a list of rotation and returns a list of int. Yeah, and wait, is that the same number I had before? It is, right? Just checking the website. Yes, 1059. So I haven't broken anything by extracting this. And this produces all the positions that are visited. Without reducing them mod 100. And so here we can say, oh, how many of them are 0? You know, I think I'll actually be a little bit cheeky here. And since both of them need this positions function, I'll just say that actually my input is no longer a list of rotations. It's a list of int. It's the positions that are visited. Where's my prepare function? Does this still compile and run correctly? Looks like it. Okay. Because I think that actually the part 1 function will be quite useful in part 2, if I'm devious enough. Because the cases that are difficult for my idea of comparing the hundreds digit are exactly those cases that part 1 already solves correctly. So I think I can just count the number of times the hundreds digit changes. But also, I don't know, this is stupid. Isn't it? Maybe not. Well, okay, so what about, though, if we go from -5 to 0? In that case, so I was imagining I would count the number of times the hundreds digit changes, and then add the number of times we stop on 0, because those are exactly the ones that I count wrong. But that's not true, because if I go from -5 to 0, I actually count that correctly. So it's kind of the number of times I approach 0 in the positive while moving downwards that I have a problem, right? Okay. So I think let's not do this. This is too cheeky for too little payoff. No, I didn't want to undo all of that, please. Did I? Yeah, there we go. I wanted this, but I don't want to extract positions and change my input type. So I think, I mean, this obviously still needs to return an int. And I want to sum the results of map. No. I'm zipping with, aren't I? Yeah. Zip with uncurry of zeros. We're gonna be clever here. I do like being clever even when there's no good reason. Zeros of takes 2 ints and returns an int. Does this compile at all, would you say? Oh, positions, of course. So positions returns a list of int. Then I'm zipping. I kind of have this vague memory that this is a clever way to zip a list together with its tail using a function, but I haven't like done the math on whether I've remembered it correctly. Oh, I shouldn't be uncurrying because zip with already... I was thinking I would zip them together and then uncurry. I can just say zip with zeros like this, right? Okay, there we go. Wow! They actually added a warning on tail. Amazing. They might actually remove it one day. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah, so tail is a partial function. If you call tail on an empty list, it just blows up your program. But here we know our list isn't empty, and that's fine. So the idea is I want to take the list of positions and compute some function for each adjacent pair of them. And this uses the applicative instance for functions in a way that I'm sure many people would disapprove of. But you know what? This is my program. So we're this function basically says, well, actually here this pattern f tail says it takes an argument x. And then it calls fx. It calls f with 2 arguments, x and tail x. Which is exactly what I want here. I want to zip with zeros, the list, and the tail of the list. So this is a cute way to do that. I don't know that you should ever put this in production, and it sort of stands out as like a contrast to my claim that I want to write nice, clean code. But I just find this too cute to skip. So it's Christmas. I'll do it the cute way if I want. So then all we need is a function that, given 2 ints, tells you how many times you passed over 0 in between them. And I think in some way, like, xy is just hundreds, the absolute value of hundreds x minus hundreds y plus a correction factor, right? Where hundreds of n is just n div 100. And correction, if y mod so if x is where we're going from, y is where we're going to. We only need to correct anything. No, this isn't as simple as that, is it? Because I was thinking, oh, the only problem is if we go from like 5 to 0, that counts as hitting 0, right? But the hundreds digit is the same. So if we're counting down towards 0. But don't we also have a problem if we're counting? No, maybe it's fine. If we're counting, like, if we start at minus 100 and count down, minus 101, yeah, that's a problem, isn't it? Because that's going to be different. That's going to be different. Different hundreds digit, but just went from minus 100 to minus 101. So div is maybe just the wrong thing to think about. Maybe I actually do want quotient. How does quotient work with negative numbers? Minus 101 quotient 100. It's minus 1. Of course, this is also minus 1. So, I mean, I guess it can't possibly be perfect for me, right? Because any sensible definition of something like quotient or dividend is going to have to give different answers for 99 and 101. And one of those will have to be the same as the answer it gives for 100. But in both cases, I want it to act different. Yeah, so that's just... That doesn't really make sense. Well, I suppose we could do the ultimate brute force thing and just say, look at all the numbers between A and B, including B but not including A, and ask how many of them are equal to 0 mod 100. It can only make the program 100 times slower, right? God, that feels so bad. It feels like admitting defeat on a very simple math puzzle. Like, there's got to be some simple function that takes two numbers and tells you how many numbers are divisible by 100 in between them, right? because that's ultimately what I'm asking for. I guess one thing I could do. No. I actually kind of like this idea of just counting every number. I hate it, but I also don't. I also kind of like it. So what if we did that? Because I can just produce a list starting at X, going to Y. Do we have in the input, oops. No R zeros, no L zeros. Okay, so I don't have to worry about ever moving by 0, whatever that would mean. What have I done? Did I somehow get a second copy of the text? What the hell is this? I had multiple copies of the input file in here somehow. Typed some weird function, I guess. When I was trying to visit a different input file, I was like, by the way, you're already visiting this input file. Do you want to do something? And I must have accidentally hit, yes, do the weird thing. So I guess what we want is even hundreds of start, next. Is this? I never even use list ranges with a step in Haskell very often. Is that how it looks? From then to? Is that what I'm looking for? Oh my god, this is in some weirdos. Give me the one that's in enum from then to. Yeah, so there's this function enum from then to, which, you know, given an enum starting value, a second value, and a stop value, produces a list of all the enums in that range. And I couldn't remember exactly what the syntax was. Like, where do you put a dot dot here? Do you put commas and then dot dots? No, you put dot dots. So this is the way to call enum from then to. Okay, that's just what I wanted to check. Where start oh, I guess what I can just do is say X, but call tail again, because I don't actually want X. I want everything after X. And then to say next is X plus the signum of Y minus X, I think. So if Y is bigger than X, this will be a positive number and will be X plus 1. If Y is smaller than X, this will be a negative number, it'll be X plus minus 1. We'll be going backwards. I think that's right. Compile? It does compile. There's another warning about tail. And it's warning me also that I didn't give the type for even hundreds. Well, it's a number that is bigger by a substantial amount, but not by a billion. I mean, that's a plausible candidate, I think. That's the right answer. Great. So I still feel a little bit defeated in that, like, I shouldn't have to count every number between A and B to determine how many numbers are divisible by 0 in there. But I'm not a mathematician. I'm okay with this. Yeah. Oh, I don't usually give type signatures to my intermediate functions. I just had it there so I could check that if I had defined it, it would have the right type. If I defined it with the right type, it would fit into the rest of the function properly. Yeah, I guess this is done. Just make sure there's nothing weird in here. Yeah, that all looks fine. All right, so that's day 1. And like I said, I don't expect we'll get day 2 for a week or so at least. Certainly day 3 won't be for at least a week. But maybe day 2 I would do tonight. I hope not. I hope I can just get to sleep instead. But there should be a link in the description to the GitHub repo if you're interested in checking it out. And I hope you had fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.